So the classical learning test is a new style of test, and it's actually pretty comparable to the ACT and the SAT. Just not a lot of people know about it. So the classical learning test, a little background, over 300 colleges accept it, and it is also included in the Florida Bright Futures. It is a test, and this is a little bit of the book. That is going to include 120 questions. 2 sections are going to be ELA portions. And then the third section, which is 1/3 of the test, is going to be math. Today's video is how to effectively increase your math score on this test. My name is Rebecca Beard, and I own a test prep and tutoring company, and we actually tutor this test quite often when actually a lot of companies do not. So stay tuned, and please like and subscribe to learn more test prep tips and tricks. So that being said, maybe you've taken this test or you're totally new to the classical learning test. Like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about the math and how to improve it, but this is what you need to know first. First of all, the math is out of 40 points. There's going to be 40 questions. Most of it is Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry, and about 5 pre-calc questions, which can discourage some students, but that's normally at the end. And then there is no calculator allowed on this test. And that is honestly the hardest part of this test. So if you are a kid that is really, really good with times tables and all that stuff, that's great, because you will need that. But at the same time, if you are a little bit like me and your calculator is your massive crutch, that is going to be a downside to your score. So my first tip actually with the classical learning test is if you are really struggling with your times tables, please relearn them just a little bit, especially the 9s. There's tons and tons of tricks online. Okay, so one of the other things that is really important on this classical learning test is that it has a reference sheet. So it may not have a calculator, which definitely does sting, but there is a reference sheet built into the test. And this reference sheet, I'm going to pop it up, but it's going to include a lot of your basic geometry formulas, some of your trig formulas, some of your pre-calc, and some of your Algebra 1 formulas. But still make sure that you deeply know how to do your basic Algebra 1 and your basic geometry formulas, because you are going to need as enough time as possible to go ahead and hand solve. You're going to have to multiply a couple times by hand, and it's going to be really critical. So the other thing to keep in mind to improve your score on this test is to practice the weird problems. And this is what I mean by that is, yes, there is a slew of basic math problems on this test, and that's great. But there's actually a couple of questions that are true logical thinking. And I've worked one-on-one with kids and they're like, why on earth is this question in the math section? But it actually makes sense. It is a logical application of math. And I'm going to pop up an example, but the summary what this is you have to make sure that you're understanding what you're asking and going ahead and applying it to the questions. And then my last tip is this sounds so cheesy and dumb, but do a practice test. Is a lot of students will just jump into this test with saying, oh, I've got an A in every single math test. That's not actually going to help you. It's going to help you a little bit on your background knowledge, but this test is very different from even the SAT, the ACT, or even any standardized math test I have seen. So my main thing is to take a practice test. There is tons free online, and go ahead and get exposure to this material. Just make sure you put your calculator away. If you need more help on this math section because it is a little bit challenging, I will have a link in the bio, and we offer CLT tutoring or classical learning test tutoring as well. Like and subscribe for more test prep videos.